Welcome to Andy and Ari On3. We are not taking the red shirt. We are here for the duration of the season and beyond. We also obviously do shows in the offseason. Ari, it's going to be this stuff this week and next, isn't it? As teams roll toward their fourth games. Bear Alexander, USC defensive tackle, taking the red shirt.
Yeah. Andy, we had heard rumblings about players watch out for game 4, game 5 coming into the year, right? Like we kind of, I don't want to say that we thought that the wave of this was coming, but we knew that people were generally aware of what game 4, game 5 meant, right? So I don't know if this is just going to be a tidal wave of these this year or if this is the beginning of a trend, but it almost feels like to a certain extent that the first 3 games of the year are just tryout tape for another team, or if things aren't going well or you're not playing enough, whatever the reason may be, you can still play the 3 games, put some tape out there, try to play well, and go get a bag. So I don't know if it's red shirt anymore. It should just be called paid shirt.
Well, the Bear Alexander is a different story than, say, the Matthew Sluka when we talked about. Matthew Sluka is the UNLV quarterback who announced Tuesday night he was leaving. We will get into that because there's more to that. We peeled back the layers of the onion on that a little bit after the show yesterday. Now we have a little better idea of what actually happened, and we can kind of diagnose it. Plus, Dave Portnoy from Barstool has a revolutionary quarterback recruiting idea that might actually help solve some of the Matthew Sluka situations too, that I think we might be able to get ourselves in on. So we'll talk about that in a moment. But let's talk Bear Alexander because it's a different kind of situation. Bear Alexander, of course, 5-star defensive tackle recruit from Texas, went to Georgia, left Georgia, went to USC. Remember, there was he was threatening to transfer in the spring. Then the collective sat him down and was like, hey, here's how the payments happen. Your payments are coming. Everything seemed fine. He gets to this season. He is not playing as much as he would like to play. He had a tweet after the Michigan game, free 9-0. He's number 90. He only played, I believe, 21 snaps in the Michigan game. And his guardians on Twitter saying he's the best defensive tackle in the country. Why aren't they playing him? Like, it was funny because everybody's like responding to his guardian going, you did see Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant on the same field in the Michigan USC game. Like, he's not actually the best defensive tackle in the country. And clearly, to USC's defensive coaching staff, he's not the best defensive tackle at USC because he's not playing very much.
Yeah, right. And like it's a two-pronged, situation we have here because, usually when people in the past weren't happy with their playing time or things weren't going the way that they thought that they should go, you were at least with the team for the year. Now in this new world, you have people opting out in the middle of the year for whatever reason it may be. It could be more money. It could be more playing time. It could be a miscommunication or disagreement with the coaching staff. Like there's a lot of reasons for this, but we are getting into the business side of things here when it comes to college football. And, much like you see in the NFL with holdouts and stuff like that, it can impact the season and the games. So, I don't know that, I'm feel comfortable or I'm in a position from this chair to make fun of or question why somebody would want to leave a college. When I was in school,
I'll question this one. Like the Sluka one, I get it. His eligibility is done if he plays a 5th game this season. He would like to get a bag to play another season of college football because he's not going to be an NFL quarterback. Bear Alexander's 6'4", 315. He is going to get a chance to play in the NFL. What he does with that chance is entirely his responsibility. I don't think he's handling that very well right now. I'm guessing it won't go well for him based on what we've seen so far. But he's in his 3rd year of college, Ari. He can finish out this year with USC and still go play at another college next year. Or he could finish out this year at USC and let's say something dramatically changes and he's actually playing more. He could just go to the NFL because he will get a chance.
Yeah, I have a problem coming down on somebody for leaving, but if you want to come down on somebody for when they leave and the circumstances of when they leave, I think that's
come
a little
down
bit
on somebody
different.
for making what I think is not a very smart business decision, and this is not a smart business decision. This is
no,
dumb.
I'm with you on that.
He has a year of eligibility next year if he wants to use it. Like,
but here's
no
the
reason
thing.
to save it.
There are people who will do things as a form of leverage to try to make a point too, right? Like, I mean, he's already gone through this a little bit of like, hey, I'm going to leave. And then he's not
went to 4 high schools, by the way.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you're of the personality where, you know, not playing or moving on to a new place is your MO, then that might come back to haunt you. So, you know, again, I'm not even speaking specifically about Bear Alexander. I have just been trained in my brain to not judge people for leaving. But if you want to judge him for making a bad business decision, I can get on board with that.
Yeah, this is a terrible business decision. I can tell you right now, it's awful. Like, NFL teams are going to look at this and go, "Yeah, we're seeing all we need to see about you." Even though,
you know, the thing that you have to say,
put you in a camp as a 7th rounder or an undrafted free agent because you're giant and you can move. But if this is how you handle not being in the starting lineup, not playing as many reps as you want during the game, NFL ain't gonna be for you, buddy. Like,
yeah,
that's
you know
not
what
the mentality.
I actually was thinking too before I went to bed last night, Andy, of like, what is Matthew Sluka's last tape? Like, if you think about his last tape that he has out there,
the Kansas game,
and that's when you and I were screaming in a Wisconsin Airbnb. What's Bear Alexander's last tape?
The Michigan game. And it's funny because Dion Bailey, who's a former USC linebacker who played in the NFL, someone who's seen it and done it, Bear Alexander's guardian was saying, drop the tape, if you have criticism of Bear, drop the tape. And he had posted some clips of Bear playing well in the game. Dion Bailey's like, okay, here's a very crucial play on the 4th quarter drive that Michigan used to win the game. And it's like an inside zone. The Michigan right tackle and tight end fire off on Bear. Now, it's not a true double team. It's a combo block because the linebacker or the tight end's going to scrape off on the linebacker very quickly. And Bear gets blown 5 yards off the ball. And you watch Khalil Mullings just roll through. Like, and all of a sudden the conversation, because Dion Bailey, you can't criticize him. He's been there. He's been a good defensive player at USC. He watched Leonard Williams play in front of him, and Leonard Williams never got blown off the ball like that. Like, you can't say you're the best, and then that happens when the game's on the line.
Okay, here's a little devil's advocate for you, Andy, because I got my business decision mind percolating a little bit. Okay. Yep. One, there's a concept of loyalty and how you handle situations like you outlined, right? And Bear Alexander, you know, has an MO of leaving when
I'm not even worried about loyalty. This is but
that's the first part of my thing.
In the eyes of the NFL. The NFL GMs, personnel people will consider this soft.
But the second half of this, so soft, quitter, whatever you want to say, that's the first part. The second part is the thing that you said about an NFL GM being like, you're giant, we'll give you a shot, 7th rounder, practice squad, whatever, he's going to make a team, right? Will another program pay him more than he's getting paid or take a flyer on him simply because of his physical attributes? Like, we have to start thinking college teams are going to approach this the same way that NFL GMs were. Now, like, that's not necessarily using high-end draft capital for somebody that you think is a problem, but college NIL situations, people will pay for a problem if that problem has upside. So, like, correct. Even though but you think,
but here's the problem with that, and this is actually yet another thing coming in from the NFL, and maybe this is part of the business decision. Maybe I'm wrong on this. Maybe he thought if he puts out more bad tape this year, it drives the price down.
Yeah, I mean, if that's how you feel, you know.
But of course, that is going to actually drive the price down anyway. Like, this is going to drive what he chose to do is going to drive the price down. And I will go out on a limb just based on the history of this particular player and say, you can pay for this, you will not get what you think you're paying for.
Right. and I still think that they're going to pay for it. Like
Somebody's
I think people
going
will
to
go.
Yeah.
So I think that like for as bad of a business decision as you may feel, or it actually is, I think that he's still going to have another opportunity somewhere to make a lot of money and to make it right. So I don't know why I would leave in the middle of a year, especially if you feel like you can get better. Your role could increase, and USC is certainly not dead in the Big Ten race. I saw people, say like opt-outs were going to happen a lot when the team is out of the conference race now in this new era, and I don't think that's obviously the case here. So, I think you have more to gain by staying than you have by leaving, but I don't think that he's going to be sitting on the curb somewhere wishing that he never did this. I think he's going to have another opportunity to make it right.
No, so somebody's going to pay him, but the problem is all of this is going to result in him not getting the ultimate big payday, like the second NFL free agent contract. That's not going to happen. Like if he keeps, and it's not because of him making these decisions, although I think this is a symptom of it. It's because he will not play well enough to ever get there. So
because of the moving around, because of the lack of reps, because
maybe he's just not good enough, and maybe he's using using the recruiting buzz and that reputation to get the bag now, because the big bag's never coming, because you have to be really good to get the big bag, and he's not even starting on the USC. So how's he going to start on an NFL team? So
it'll be interesting to see where he lands.
Yep.
This stuff is going to be worth tracking. And the thing is I tweeted kind of in jest last night. It's like, remember when we were all worried about, expanding the playoff and bowl game opt-outs? I think that we have to really warm up to the idea that there are going to be smart and savvy business decisions. There's going to be dumb business decisions, but they are going to have and be business decisions constantly in this world. And as long as we continue to view the sport in the amateur way, you're going to be disappointed, because people are going to opt out in the middle of the season. They're going to opt out for bowl games, and they might even opt out for playoff games. Things are going to happen in this sport because the almighty dollar is going to take precedent over what we think loyalty and all the other things that make us feel warm and fuzzy inside. The expanded playoff doesn't solve the opt-out problem. We got people opting out in the middle of the non-conference schedule now. So at the end of the year, maybe it's different. Your team's in the national championship. You're probably going to play. But don't be surprised by the things that you see when money is the motivational factor.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see how all of this goes. So we've got to talk about Matthew Sluka, and we learned more about Matthew Sluka and that situation, Ari, yesterday, because what we had, it's like a shaft of golden light has appeared over Ari.
So idea? I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what to do here, because the sun is rising and the sun is going directly into the lens of my camera. So we can keep going and wait 5 minutes for it to go back up, or I can try to move the camera over. It's up to you.
I like this. You look very angelic, and the sun will move, so we'll be all right.
But
let's solo me while I'm talking here. Let's solo me while I'm talking. All right. Let's talk about Matthew Sluka a little bit, because we did learn some more things. Here's what we learned through our guy Pete Nakos at On3. Adam Rittberg at ESPN talked to Sluka's dad. Ross Dellinger at Yahoo talked to the collective at UNLV. So we can piece all of this stuff together. So Matthew Sluka, his dad claims that a coach at UNLV said they would get like $100,000 to go there. His agent tells Pete Nakos that they didn't have a written contract. And the agent says that they couldn't do a written contract until Sluka enrolled. Remember, he's finishing up at Holy Cross, so he didn't enroll until the summer. So they couldn't do a written contract until Sluka enrolled. Now, that is wrong. The agent apparently missed the very big federal court case that made it where that would work. So they could have done a contract. They just didn't. The UNLV collective says, hey, the agent who was working directly with Sluka was not registered in the state of Nevada, so we couldn't deal directly with him. That he didn't actually start trying to negotiate until August. Again, all of this is bad. All of this is dumb. All of this is kind of everybody's fault. So that's how this happened. It's a big mess of the agent messed up. The family believed something that the person wasn't authorized to offer. The person making the offer wasn't authorized to make it and should have known that. The collective probably should have locked the kid down anyway with something, but didn't. Kind of lowballed him. So all of that snowballed, and now Matthew Sluka is leaving the team. That's what happened. That was the gist of it. So now we got to figure out what happens next. Haj Malik Williams takes over as a starter, and I think this is part of it too. Haj Malik Williams is the transfer from Campbell. They are the Fighting Camels. And welcome back, Ari.
I got to say, you're doing a fantastic job of distracting people while I used a coffee table book to block the ray of light. Keep going.
Of filibustering. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So Haj Malik Williams takes over. He was at Campbell, but he ran with the ones all spring and all summer. It seems like the Rebels, the players, are actually very excited about the idea of Haj Malik Williams being their QB1. We'll see if that's just them trying to make the best of a bad situation, or they really liked him the best anyway. We'll find out. They play Fresno State, 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 12:30 local on Saturday. That game's on FS1. Can't wait to see it. But Ari, interesting thing that came out yesterday that I was fascinated by, and I think you and I need to have a discussion about this just as a show. So Dave Portnoy, who is the president of Barstool Sports, he's the founder of Barstool Sports. He's a proud Michigan grad. He went on their show, The Yak, on Wednesday and said this.
Michigan, I will be the quarterback guy. You just say, Dave, you go. I'll talk to Sean. Who do you guys want? Who's in there? Give me a group. I'll go get them. I will sign them $1 million, $2 million, whatever it is.
What's the top?
$3 million.
What if, are some of them going for more? Wasn't the Nico kid like...
Fine, but I can get a quarterback. We don't have a quarterback. If I don't get the number one...
for 3, though. You can be in the stratosphere.
Yeah, but you don't want to... I'm wondering, is Dave... how are you running this? I want to get a quarterback, or I'm like George Steinbrenner, I will spend any amount of dollars.
No, I'm gonna get us a top 10 quarterback in the portal coming out every year. Top 10 quarterback.
A freshman or a portal.
Okay, I'm interested in maybe doing this for the Badgers too.
And then
I think that we might.
And then, here's
you know what, I'm in.
Well, here's a little bit of the issue.
Okay.
You'll have to find something else because they're doing a weekly spot on Parm My Take. My guy, not your guy. My guy. That's already been taken. So you're gonna have to find something else for the Wisconsin guy.
Okay.
But like college football recap
so the Wisconsin,
and a college football hit. So there's two things: $3 million marketing agreement. I think that's legal.
I think that's legal. So my guy, I'm thinking.
All right, so that's our guy, Big Cat, getting part of his show just taken away in favor of the Michigan quarterback that his boss is paying. But all of this sounds great because Dave's right. That is entirely legal. Like within the current rules, within the old rules, within whatever the rules the House settlement is coming up with, because multiple segments on the biggest sports podcast in the country on Pardon My Take, if you want to pay somebody $2 million for that, it's probably you would consider that market value. So, and this goes into my there's always another quarterback argument. Remember we were talking about that with Oklahoma, with Auburn.
Yeah.
Like, don't get so tied up in we signed this 5-star. There's always another quarterback. Just keep signing quarterbacks, and so that's what Portnoy wants to do. But it leads me to a question, and you heard Dan, you heard Big Cat, who's a Wisconsin grad, say, okay, I'm going to do that for Wisconsin. Ari, Andy and Ari On3 needs to decide which school we're going to sponsor. Like which school will we buy a quarterback for each year? We can't afford those kinds of numbers yet. We're moving up the podcast charts. Like we are coming for Pardon My Take. But could we fund UNLV? Like if $100,000 would have been what it actually took for UNLV to keep its guy, could we fund that every year?
I don't know the numbers. That's above my pay grade, but I'd be interested in, being the person or the entity that helped the team get their guy. But you know what this reminds me of my fantasy land scenario. Andy, do you know how old Phil Knight is?
Phil Knight is
Not to put you on the spot.
83?
86.
86. Okay.
You know how much he's worth?
Billions.
$38.1 billion, according to my quick Google search. Now, this guy is an Oregon fan, obviously.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I think before he goes, he probably would like to see Oregon win a national title.
He has said this.
The thing I don't understand, and maybe we'll get to this one day, but it hasn't happened yet. It happened. I mean, Nike's helped out Oregon a lot. But if Phil Knight just goes, you know what? I'm going to pay every 5-star recruit who comes to Oregon $5 million, and I'm going to make a Nike catalog every year with a new line that is called Up and Coming. And I'm going to put out this catalog. We're going to put it on Nike.com, and these kids who come to Oregon are going to be featured in the magazine as models. Could this man just go out and just buy himself? Because $5 million for 20 people a year sounds like an insane amount of money, and it is, but it's not even a drop in the bucket of what this guy has. And he's getting to the point where he's at the age where he can certainly do it. Now, I understand that rich people usually don't spend money like crazy, and I understand that when you're smart and you get that rich, you probably are less likely to throw money out the window that way. But is there any reason why Oregon can't just have a person who's far richer than Dave Portnoy just throw money around when he owns a company that's printing it? Like, I have this fascination with...
He doesn't own the company and he doesn't run the company. And here's where you're going to find a problem. Your Nike catalog idea, your Nike line, that's not going to happen because the second Oregon does that, all the other Nike schools are going to drop Nike. And that's going to hurt Nike.
What if Phil Knight starts up a fake shell athleisure company?
That would work.
There's no way around it. Like, you don't think that the guy that's worth $38 billion can figure out a way to do this?
He could absolutely do that. But he hasn't.
Yeah, he could call it. Yeah, but I'm saying, like, even if the Nike scenario in that area, there's workarounds. You could start something and create something
Ari,
to make market value.
Ari, Phil starts a shell athleisure company, but it doesn't even have to be shell. It could be just a front. It's a real athleisure company, but the goal is to fund him buying all the Oregon players. That athleisure company signs a deal with our show to outfit us exclusively. We use that money to buy a quarterback for UNLV.
Look at that. It's free enterprise. Can I do another Fantasyland
NIL economics too? But go ahead.
See what I'm talking about with this knowledge stuff. Okay. Hey, Andy. Now this one might take a little bit of a turn, but we are talking about NIL Fantasyland right now, right?
Correct.
So I was watching 60 Minutes a few years ago, and there was a segment about what the Mormon Church is worth. And the Mormon Church is worth billions and billions of dollars. Now, the Mormon Church, affiliated obviously with Brigham Young University, what is the number one way that you could promote your faith? By having a really good football team.
Yeah, by hiring the best Jewish quarterback you could find.
That's
right. They did that this year. Yeah.
But I'm saying if the Mormon Church decided we're going to get out of Salt Lake City strip malls and we're going to get into the business of football, and they wanted to run a crazy NIL campaign, and it doesn't even have to be Latter-day Saint players, right? Like it doesn't have to be Mormons. It could be anybody of any faith. There's a quarterback, like you said, right now is Jewish. I saw the shirt that said BY Jew. Love it. You go out and you sign top 5 classes every single year by taking some of the tithing money that they get, and you funnel it around to the best prospects in America to make BYU the best football program or have the best roster in college football. What does that do? We're talking about BYU on the show. They're on national television. Hell, they might even become like Colorado in a sense of like, can this experiment work? Can you find a better commercial or a better campaign for the promotion of talking about Mormonism than that? Like, I don't know that would ever happen, but like I came up with all these like crazy NIL scenarios that in theory are legal and could happen from people and entities that have the means to do it.
Our guy, Christopher Jordan, Auburn fan, Tim Cook's the CEO of Apple.
Yeah.
Like, it is a round. If Apple wanted to fund Auburn's roster at $5 million a player, it's a rounding error.
It wouldn't even be something that they would see on the balance sheet.
They wouldn't even notice it.
Apple's market cap right now is $3.44 trillion. Now, I know it's a little bit different when you're being the CEO and you're not the founder. But if Apple had a new campaign for headphones, like the ones I'm wearing here, great headphones, by the way, not a sponsor. I wish they were.
We could buy,
and they had
if Apple was one of our sponsors, we wouldn't be buying UNLV's quarterback. We might be buying like Arizona State's quarterback.
When we were at the Athletic, I always had this fantasy that when the Athletic inevitably got sold, it would be to Apple, and that they would include the Athletic with every new iPhone. You'd be in the news chat or the news app there, but that didn't come. Like, if I were the CEO of the company, that's how I would have done it. But Andy, Auburn, Apple, they take the tumors trees and turn them into apple trees. Could happen.
I don't know that they grow in that part of Alabama, but sure. Apple.
There are people who are either. I don't know if Tim Cook cares about college football. I don't know anybody
he goes
who wears
to the game sometimes.
Yeah. Okay. So hey, I just don't know if rich people at that level have the same affinity for the sport that we do. But I think Phil Knight, who made his money in sports tangentially, is probably the best option of that. And he has so much money.
And he hasn't done it yet, even though he could have. And he
definitely could have. There's
why it's probably
Oregon's
not
already doing really well.
He could have been doing this all along.
Andy, it's not like turning BYU into a recruiting juggernaut either, because BYU has policies on campus in terms of like their code of conduct that aren't as typical college kids. Like, there are things there that, you can't drink soda and, the rest of them. So like that would be a tough lifestyle decision, but Oregon is already cool. Like, it's like not that hard to convince players to want to consider Oregon already. So could you imagine, starting the Knight apparel line and giving everybody who, you get it. In theory, he could buy them a national title if he really wanted to.
But the fact is he hasn't, and no, because the New York Yankees not winning the World Series every year, or the Dodgers not winning the World Series every year, are an example of you can have all the money, you can spend all the money, and sometimes you still pick the wrong players.
Andy, look me dead in the eye right now. If Oregon signed 25-star prospects each year over a 4-year period, they would win the national title.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, you could buy it.
But they haven't done it.
But you agree with that, right? Like, the whole New York Yankees thing goes out the window in college football if you have 85-star prospects on your roster in a 4-year period.
Yes,
now it might be hard to keep them.
If you could get all of your scholarship players were 5-star players, like, yes, because you'd be getting the bulk of the 5 stars each year.
Yeah, so you would be taking them from other teams too. Like, you literally. Now, I don't know if everybody would do it, but if you did a 5-star, like, because like Nico is the one that gets all the headlines, right? Like, he's the one that gets all the money.
Portnoy was like $2 million, $3 million. Like, the contract we've seen for Nico, it's $2 million and change. It's not outrageous considering what they're getting out of it.
Is there a corner in high school football that wouldn't take $5 million to go to Oregon? Is there an offensive tackle that wouldn't take $5 million to go to Oregon? So, like, if you start giving every position player quarterback money, they'd go there.
Yet
I think it's fantasy land, but
they're never. But it's funny because this is what the doomsayers said. This is what will happen if NIL ever happens. Well, no, it won't, because people don't spend their money that way. It'd be funny if somebody did, but they don't. So,
but in this scenario, an 86-year-old man who, might have 15 years left, right? Who wants something and has everything in the world and has endless wealth. Like, if anybody was going to be done with their money and it wouldn't matter.
NIL's been around since 2021. He could have already done it.
Yeah, no, he's not going.
The clock's ticking on that, Ari.
Yeah. In theory, though, it makes sense if somebody wanted to buy one. I think they could, because the NIL dollar figures are massive. Like when you talk about Nico and the figures that he was getting and some of the guys that are getting, but like, I don't think that somebody with $1 billion would have a hard time getting and filling out an offensive defensive line, right? Like they're just not getting the same. They're not commanding the same type of money.
But for whatever reason, the billionaires don't want to create the greatest offensive and defensive lines we've ever seen. Frankly, I think it's a matter of poor priorities, but that's just me. Ari, you've had Wendy's Nuggs dipped in sauce, but have you had them covered in sauce? We, of course, are presented by Wendy's, and Wendy's new Saucy Nuggs take the crispy and spicy nugs you love and turn them up to 11. Choose between flavors like buffalo, honey barbecue, garlic, parmesan. If you're a real heat seeker, try the spicy ghost pepper. I dare you. 7 delicious ways to try the nugs you already love. Pick a flavor, grab some extra napkins, and prepare to nug like you've never nugged before. For a whole new way to nug, it's got to be Wendy's at participating U.S. Wendy's. All right, Ari, we got to pick a couple more games. We had the packed pick show on Monday, so packed that we didn't get to everything. So let's start with this one. Kentucky at Ole Miss. Ole Miss's first big challenge of the year. When last we saw Kentucky, they were pushing Georgia to the limit. Our friend Matt Jones from Kentucky Sports Radio had this to say.
Remind you, the home field advantage at Ole Miss is not that great, especially for a noon game. Okay? They roll out noon game. That's 11 a.m. local time.
Correct.
That's another thing people forget. So it's not even lunchtime yet. They are a late arriving crowd. It's a small stadium. It doesn't really get that loud. And usually the other team has a decent presence because people want to go to Oxford. So even though I think it's one of the best party places to go in the SEC, as far as how hard is it to play, I would actually argue, Drew, it's not that hard of a place to play, especially at noon. I think you're getting them at the best time you can get them.
It may be the best time to get them, Ari, but they also have that roster.
I was going to say the best time on the clock to
difficult.
get them, maybe not the best time in the calendar year to get them.
No.
I've never seen a game there, but I've heard it's not a loud stadium. So
I have been there on the best day they ever had there. The greatest day in the history of Ole Miss football. When they beat Alabama in 2014, Katy Perry was the guest picker. Like, it was legendary. Legendary. And it was cool. And the atmosphere was great. And they were loud at the end of that game. But what Matt said is basically right. That said, does it matter? And which Kentucky team shows up? Like, the more important question in this game. So Ole Miss is a 17.5-point favorite in this game. This is the week of giant double-digit conference spreads. Ole Miss is 17.5-point favorite in this game. The Kentucky that played against Georgia will cover that spread. The Kentucky that played against South Carolina will not. So which Kentucky are we getting?
Yeah, well, here's the thing. I think that Ole Miss is scoring 30 on everybody they play this year. So that is, I think, the baseline thing you have to consider, right? Like, I think, can I say with a straight face and be serious about it that Ole Miss has a better offense than Georgia this year? Like, is that a fair thing to say, or is that still like, are we still in scary hours with that?
I don't think that's an outrageous statement. Time will tell. Yeah. They do play each other, but I don't think that's outrageous.
I don't even think it matters when they play each other because Georgia's defense is really, really good. I think that the players and the way that they play offense and the way that Lane Kiffin has drawn it up is more explosive and has the ability to put points on the board at a high level. I love their receivers. Jackson Dart obviously is putting up stats at an unprecedented level for him, for his career, and maybe even Mississippi. I would have to look that up. But like, I don't know that Kentucky is going to be able to stop Ole Miss from scoring 30 points. And because of that, I have a hard time really gaining any traction here.
I agree with you. I think Ole Miss covers this. I think we may have gotten the best of Kentucky that we were going to get in the Georgia game. And the other thing is Ole Miss has just been tuning up for this. Like, there's been they just kind of ramped up, and this is their continued ramp up until they start hitting hard games, which, look, as the SEC schedule goes, did they get the best draw? They have to play Georgia, but the LSU game's not looking as bad as challenging, as daunting as it was before. The Oklahoma game, which they have an open date before, it doesn't appear as daunting as it did before. At Arkansas,
Andy,
actually looks a little more daunting.
When you look at this schedule, though, and you look at the time in which Ole Miss shoved their chips onto the table, with the roster that they have and a schedule that now looks very manageable, like, it's impossible to me. Like, what would have to happen for Ole Miss to not make the playoff? Would they have to lose at LSU, against Georgia, and at Arkansas? Like, where are the 3 losses going to be? Because 10-2 Ole Miss is in, right?
Like, Sellers' ankle's feeling better and they lose at South Carolina, and then they lose to Georgia.
I mean, I think if they lose to South Carolina and Georgia, they're probably still going to get in if those are their only 2 losses. I think a 10-2 SEC team is going to get in. How many SEC? We have to have the conversation at some point. How many SEC teams are going to? Well, it's hard on Bubble Watch, but I think it's going to. Okay.
Yeah, we have a Dear Andy question that will help answer that.
Okay.
All right. So,
but I think 42-20-ish, 42-17 is probably like where I'm thinking in this game. I think they're going to cover.
I'm with you. And I realize this is like one of those college game day picks where the same logo goes across the screen and then they GIF it later and like, look at these morons. But I do. I think Ole Miss is rolling right now. All right, one more. That's Minnesota at Michigan. We talked a lot about Michigan. I sang the praises of Sharon Moore for figuring out how to beat USC, even though they don't have a functional passing offense. And they still probably don't have a functional passing offense. They're just incredibly lucky that they get to play a team that lost a game to a team that had no functional passing offense. So Iowa's already sort of given you the roadmap.
Yeah, I think if Michigan were playing literally anybody else this week, I think I would probably fade them. But they are playing the perfect matchup for what they just went through and who they are. So, and Michigan, I believe, and I don't know if you'll disagree with me on this, is probably a better version of Iowa right now, even if they don't have a quarterback. Like, I think you can even make the case that Iowa's got a better passing attack right now. I don't think it could be worse for Michigan.
They threw for double what Michigan threw for, or more than double before last
But
week.
I think Michigan's defense is probably better than Iowa's, which is something to say too. It's a weird year, guys. Just hang with me here. I think Michigan is the athletic, better version of Iowa this year, and Iowa just dump truck this team. They're going on the road to Ann Arbor a week after Michigan got the biggest win of its season and proved that they were still alive in the Big Ten hunt. And I'm not ruling out the notion that Orgy can throw for 150 or 200 yards in a game. Like, I know that
maybe USC's defense was okay.
Yeah, USC's defense is probably pretty good this year, right? So I don't know. This number seems pretty low to me, and it's going to be an aggravating game to watch. And people who love Michigan are probably going to have a hard time if the score is tied at halftime or they're up by 3 in the middle of the third quarter. But when you're laying 8.5, I certainly think that this game could be 24-14, 21-10 type thing. I think that Michigan's going to cover the spread. And if you look at the over-under at 38.5, like, I think like a 24-14 type game that puts you right on that number is really within question here. Or, I mean, really reasonable here.
Yeah. I think a score similar to the Iowa-Minnesota score is quite possible, and that would cover the spread. So, yeah, I'm going to take Michigan to cover here, and they're so lucky to be playing this game right now. The total on this game is 36.5. So, by the way, it's an Iowa total now, Ari. That was the total on Iowa-Minnesota, which went over.
Yeah, and it went over because Iowa just broke loose in the second half, right? Like, and that's what Michigan's probably going to do. I would probably take the under of the first half spread if I was going to gamble on this one. And then I think Michigan is going to wear them down. I think the exact opposite of what happened in last week's game is going to happen here. I think Michigan is going to be in a hard-fought Big Ten West game with Minnesota for a quarter and a half or 2 quarters. And then I think as the game wears on, they're going to get stronger and faster and break away.
I'm with you. This feels like similar to last week and similar to the fourth quarter of the Michigan USC game. All right, Ari. Now we transition to another preview. This one's sponsored by Prize Picks. The best daily fantasy game in America. Download that app. Use the code STAPLES. Play $5, get $50 instantly. The way Prize Picks works is you are choosing squares. So the squares are attached to players. Obviously, they have the NFL, they have the college football, they have the WNBA, they all have the NBA when it gets started, Major League Baseball, you name it, and you decide how you want to handle it. Pick as few as 2 squares. The more squares you pick, the higher the potential payout. Ari, I'm looking at this Virginia Tech Miami game. They are playing Friday night. And so here's what I've gleaned from watching Virginia Tech play this season. The 2 games they've lost, they've actually defended the run very well, but they have been torched in the passing game. Now, both those games were close losses. They lost in overtime to Vanderbilt. They lost by 3 to Rutgers. Miami's a better offensive team than either of those teams by far. But I will say, if you're looking at, say, Damian Martinez, the Miami running back, his square is 60.5 rushing yards. I don't think you go more than on that. I think if you think Miami's going to win, you look at Cam Ward, the quarterback, and his 314.5 pass yards, and you slam more on that. You slam more on any of the receiver total. Jacoby George, 45.5 receiving yards. You slam more on that. That's where if you think Miami's going to win this game, that's how they win, with an explosive passing game, because Virginia Tech's defense has made opponents look explosive in the passing game, even when they haven't been against other teams, and they've stuffed them in the run game.
Isn't it incredible how good Miami's passing offense has been that we have forgotten just how damn good Damian Martinez actually is, though?
Yeah.
Like, he is such a good player. You know what I mean? Like, I actually think I may disagree with you here on this for 60.5 yards, because more than, like a 14 or 12 rush game for 67 yards, I don't think is an amazing game, but I still think it gets there. But if you're wary
Virginia
about
Tech is holding opposing back, like Rutgers just runs it straight at you with Monangai. They held Rutgers. Hold on, I'm calling up the stat. They held Rutgers to 2.94 yards a carry. So if you have 15 carries, you're going to have less than 45 yards, even as a good back. So I'm just telling you.
So you might actually play it safe too with the touchdown prop there, where you have the more than 0.5 receiving and rushing touchdowns too, because he does.
There you go. Because you might catch it out of the backfield too.
I do think that he is somebody that Miami is going to want to get going at some point, because as they start getting into the teeth of their schedule, Andy, and they start playing some better teams, and Virginia Tech, I think on the right night, can be a tough. I mean, we thought this team was going to be an ACC contender this year, so that's funny that we're talking about them like it's over already. You want Damian Martinez feeling good, productive, and wearing down defenses, because eventually Miami's going to find themselves where they need to win a game on the ground. And I think that it's important to remember that they have, in my opinion, one of the best running backs in the country too. So that's a good thought, though.
Now, for Virginia Tech to have a chance in this game, Kyron Drones has to go more than the 163.5 passing yards. That's just there's no question here. Like that's how you keep up, because this Miami offense is too explosive. They're gonna get theirs. This is not gonna be a low scoring game. So Kyron Drones is gonna have a big game. We'll see what happens. Friday night game, ACC opener. We think the Canes are the best team in the ACC. Now we get to see them against the team we thought was going to be sneaky good in the ACC. I don't know if Virginia Tech is that, but I do think they'll be pumped for this game. So
it is a banger of a Friday night game. It's a good appetizer. I would say, like, we have to start doing like appetizer rankings in terms of like what you think the best appetizers are. Like for me, I don't know if we want to go down this road yet, but I have certain opinions on what my favorite appetizer would be.
You do?
I think this is a mid-tier, mid to upper tier appetizer of the year, I think.
So this is like cheese fries?
Yeah, I would say like it depends on whether or not you think buffalo wings are actually an appetizer or they're an entree. I actually got them for an entree.
They can be both
together. Yeah, I think this is like a good onion ring or a cheese fry.
There you go. Producer River says mozzarella sticks. He clearly does not know my opinion on mozzarella sticks, and also doesn't know that you and I discussing mozzarella sticks will devolve into a 2-hour conversation that none of the people watching or listening to the show have time for.
We've had it before, right? You think they're mid, right?
There's a perfect spot where they're the perfect temperature, where they don't burn your mouth and they aren't ice cold. And so you have basically 5 seconds to eat them. And that doesn't work for me. Just as a concept, that doesn't work for me. All right. We gotta talk before we get to our Dear Andy questions. We got to talk about Huel. So Huel is one of the coolest products that we have gotten to try doing this show. I have enjoyed it very much. 400 million meals sold worldwide. And when I say meal, it is a meal in a bottle. So you grab that Huel drink. I've got the chocolate. I've got the vanilla. I know exactly how many calories are in it. I know exactly how many of every macro is in it. I know exactly what I'm putting in my body. But the thing is, it also tastes great and it fills me up. It does actually replace a meal, which a lot of these drinks, you say, okay, I'm getting all this protein, but you're still hungry like 30 minutes later. You're getting 35 grams of protein, and these Huel drinks are nice, such a nice slow burn. And so you drink, you go on about your day, and you have put exactly what you wanted to put in your body when you wanted to do it. So go to Huel.com. That's Huel.com. 15% off with the code STAPLES. So my whole family has started using these Huel drinks because I'll drink them for breakfast in the morning. My wife will take one to have as her lunch at work. My son will grab one as we're going out the door because he doesn't like to wake up early. He likes to have something that he can just slam in the car as he's going to school, and then he's set to go. It is amazing. So Huel.com, Huel.com, 15% off with the code STAPLES. All right, Ari, we do have questions from the people. And this is a fun one from at Uncaged. And I had to look this up for the written version of Dear Andy. So I already know the answer to this, but I want to see. I hope you haven't looked it up already. Because I want to see.
I haven't, no.
Good. And then I have a bonus question after that. So from at Uncaged, when was the last time an active coach beat Georgia?
Holy crap.
Active FBS head coach. So someone who is a current FBS head coach, when is the last time one of those people beat Georgia?
Oh, my God. I'm trying to think. One of my best friends got married when Georgia was upset, I think 4 years ago, and I'm trying to remember who beat them. It was either Mizzou or South Carolina, right?
It was 5 years ago. It was South Carolina.
5 years
and
already?
Will Muschamp is not an active head coach.
I don't know, man.
Christopher Jordan guesses Gus Malzahn. Not Gus Malzahn, because that was in 2017. Gus Malzahn is an active head coach, but there has been one since. It was
that's a hell of a
Florida
trivia
Atlantic.
question.
It was Florida Atlantic coach Tom Herman as the Texas coach in the Sugar Bowl.
Wow.
So they followed the 2018 season by beating Georgia in the Sugar Bowl. That was when Sam Ehlinger goes, "We're back." Jacob got it in the chat. He guessed right. Or probably knew. But
somebody guessed Billy St. Pierre.
Nope. No, it is
These
amazing.
People are ruthless, man. They're ruthless.
They are ruthless. I made a list of games Kirby Smart has lost. And so since he lost to Tom Herman, he lost to Nick Saban 3 times. He lost to Dan Mullen once. And then you could argue that he chased Dan Mullen out of Florida, or at least had a part in it. He lost to Will Muschamp, of course. He hasn't lost to many people. So can Kalen DeBoer make that trivia question much easier to answer this weekend?
Yeah, I think they can. I think they will. The thing that you have to realize about college football, Andy, is that when you have one of the top 3 programs in college football, like, you only lose 5 times in a 5-6 year period. Like, there's not a lot of losses on your schedule to begin with. And when you're also coaching in the same league as the greatest coach of all time, that's going to be the bulk of your losses. So that was a really tough question. But I do think that this is a very important game. I think that you could say this is a more important game for Alabama than it is for Georgia, because again, whoever loses this game is still going to be firmly in the national championship race. And
Georgia has the win against Clemson already. We think Clemson can keep winning.
Oh,
and then they have games at Texas and Ole Miss that if they win those, it doesn't really matter what happens.
Yeah, right. And I think they could even lose one of those and still get in. I think that we're going to, talk about that. But for Alabama specifically, I think that there is this notion, or has been this notion, that because Nick Saban is no longer there, and because a bunch of people hit the portal shortly after he left, that Alabama is a shell of its former self. Now, I think in 5 years, it's a possibility that it is. I think that Kalen DeBoer has a great and important responsibility to keep the recruiting situation there afloat. But the current roster, with the talent that it has, I think you could make the case, and I don't know if you want to do this right now, but I've thought this, like, I think Alabama may just have better players across the board than Georgia does this year. So that, to me, is probably going to be clipped and is going to go on YouTube, and Georgia people are going to get angry at me. But, like, at the very least, even if it's not true, it's a discussion.
I'd put it in the hype video.
Yeah, but, like, it's a discussion, right? Like, you could disagree with me.
It's a legitimate discussion. It absolutely
it's a legitimate discussion.
And we can watch the game and get more data on that and decide how we feel about that. Let me go to, well, before we go to our next question from Nikhil, because it's also Georgia related, I do want to add a bonus question to the first one.
Okay.
Who was the last active coach who is still with his current team to beat Georgia?
Andy, I'm not good at trivia. I already told you this. You're humiliating me in front of everybody. I don't know. I'm trying to think of the last time Georgia lost a regular season.
Well, think of coaches who've been with their teams a long, long time.
Did Clemson beat them in the playoff 7 years ago that I'm forgetting? Was it Dabo Swinney?
It is Dabo Swinney, but not in the playoff.
Okay,
it is Dabo Swinney on August 31st, 2013, beating Mark Richt's team. Ari, I covered this game. I left my wife home with a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old. Those children are now in 9th and 8th grade. That's how long that's been. But yeah, Dabo is the answer to that question. So Kalen DeBoer can also become the answer to that trivia question if he can win this weekend. But now this question from Nikhil, because Nikhil went a ways to get this thing asked. Reached out to me on Instagram, then sent me the email. So it's a very well thought out email. Dear Andy and Ari, I've been listening to you two for a long time. My favorite college football podcasters by far, and so happy to see you guys reunited. For context, I consider myself a reasonable UGA fan. Started watching at the end of the Jim Donnan years. Haven't wanted Mike Bobo fired either time, but the fact that he's now under scrutiny until he wins a championship as primary OC following up Todd Monken. My question is in small part about UGA's overreaction in a big ocean context of Ari's overreactions. People have called UGA the new standard, Kirby Darth Vader, and the benefit of the doubt that has come with that and should, much like Bama and Saban. So I'm wondering now why the goalposts are moving for UGA. We played our first SEC road game at UK at night against a motivated team and played really well, played really well, and the fans were hyped, and we didn't play well and almost lost. Keeping in mind, Kirby's last 2 road games at UK scored all of 16 in 2022 and 14 in 2020. Ari felt that this was immediately need to go ahead and drop UGA, pick Bama, even though we all watched Bama go up by 1 score with 5 minutes left against USF. And you said that was a reason not to drop Bama, even 1 ranker spot. Ari, you have said that when Andy is wrong, it's usually when he's the most confident. I think for you, it's your strong overreactions. So he goes on here. But
okay.
Can I answer the question as to why the goalposts get moved for Georgia right now?
Sure, but I don't know if I moved the goalpost. So you go ahead and do that, but I'll explain my thought process.
We all moved the goalpost, and I'll tell you why. Because this is exactly what y'all wanted. And I say y'all, when I say y'all, I mean Georgia fans. You wanted to be the most dominant program in college football. You wanted to have the program Alabama had under Nick Saban. Congratulations. You're it now. Like, people used to say, we want Bama. Now they say we want Georgia. Guess what? That also includes being held to an impossibly high standard. Deal with it. This is what you wanted. This is what you asked for. And guess what? You have to keep earning that spot over and over again. And we'll keep moving the goalposts if you keep earning it, because you'll keep being the best. And we'll keep expecting you to always look like the best, which is the same thing we did with Alabama when Nick Saban was the coach. So if this is what you want, if you want to be Darth Vader, this is what you get.
Yeah. And just for your continued support of the show, I wanted to say thank you. I want to explain.
Yes, Nikhil, thank you so much.
My thought process here, because I think a lot of times, and it's so easy because there's so much content and there's so much, tweets and top 10s, and there's a lot of stuff for you guys to choose from. But I didn't drop Alabama very far. I did drop them a few spots in my top 10 after the USF game. And I dropped Georgia, I think, one spot because of the Kentucky game. But it was more so about teams that were winning big games around them, and I've been adjusting accordingly. But the reason why I lost faith in Georgia more than I lost faith in Alabama when you both played close games against teams that you should have blown out is I can identify directly what caused Alabama to struggle against USF. I saw the repair of what caused them to struggle, and then when the repair was made, they steamrolled them. So I am still in question with Georgia's offensive skill talent. Now, obviously, week by week, we get more context and more information. And as we get more context and information, we're able to form more thorough and correct opinions. But I don't just look at the ESPN scoreboard like ESPN, or not ESPN, like the ESPN scoreboard like AP voters do, and just move teams up and down based on the final score of the game. Like, there's thought process and analysis that goes into what we say. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm not prone to overreactions. Everybody knows I'm a prisoner of the moment sometimes, and I get excited and I just fly off the rails. And I think that's what makes the show fun. But I do think that when it comes to this Alabama-Georgia discussion going into this football game, I have a blatant question about Georgia's offense as a whole. And I have more questions about whether they're going to be able to score than Alabama's going to score. Now, if Georgia comes out and beats the crap out of Alabama, that would be the least surprising thing in the world because we're talking about Georgia here. But I'm trying to apply what I understand about the sport and what I've seen so far this year to make an educated guess on what's going to happen. So it's not because I moved Georgia down 2 spots. I need to move Alabama down accordingly because they both played close game. Like, that's not how my analysis works. And I hope that that's rational, Andy. You save me from being stupid all the time. If I'm being stupid, let me know. But I do think that, like, there's like thought and reason applied to this sort of thing here. I'm not just pulling Alabama's going to win out of my ass and throwing it out there. Because I actually think Alabama's going to win because I think they've got better players. I think they've got less deficiencies offensively, and they're going to score points.
No, it's sound, and your reasoning on Alabama USF is sound too. Like, as soon as they put Pritchett in, everything changed, and then we saw Proctor and Pritchett together against Wisconsin, and it was never close. Like, the thing that we worried about, they fixed. Georgia hasn't had a chance to show that they fixed the thing we worried about. This will be their first chance.
But Andy, too, Alabama's was a personnel fix when you put people into the game. Like, Georgia's personnel is what it is. You can't fix your personnel if that's the problem. Now, maybe I'm underrating Dominic Lovett, but like, who's the guy? I haven't seen that yet.
Could it be a young guy that we haven't really seen yet, that they weren't sure was ready, but now they're going to give it a shot? Like, that is the thing when you sign all these 5 stars.
Oh yeah,
that's always
I understand that more than anybody. If somebody shows up and is awesome in the game, then I did not know that. I will learn from it, and then it will affect my analysis moving forward. Like, I'm not I'm not Miss Cleo. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm just telling you, based on
we're going to have a bet that if you lose, you actually dress as Miss Cleo.
Guys, if I was Miss Cleo, I've said this on the show, and I'm going to say it again, Andy. If I knew what was going to happen in all these games, I'd be in Las Vegas swimming in Suge Knight's death row pool with a cigar and 900 women in there. Like, I would be like the biggest gambling degenerate on the face of the earth. There'd be a party at my house every day. So let me tell you this. I don't know why our jobs went from reporting and analysis to prognosticator. Like, people expect people to know what's going to happen before it happens. And if you are brave enough to apply analysis and then that analysis turned out to not bear the result that you anticipated, you're an idiot. I know that's part of the job now and I embrace it, but like, guys, it's the reason they play the games. We don't know what's going to happen, and Georgia beating the crap out of anybody wouldn't surprise me in the least. So I'm not down on Georgia. I just think they're playing a really good team on the road that has a lot to prove under a head coach that knows how to draw up some football plays. They might have better players, and their offensive weapons like Ryan Williams are super tantalizing and exciting. So like, that's my analysis.
Humble Shapes doesn't understand what words mean. This is not analysis. It's your opinions to be respected, I guess. Do you understand what analysis is? You take facts and then you form opinions based on those facts. That's literally the definition of it.
Oh, Craig.
Sorry. All right.
Yeah.
Got a question from Sean here. I told you we'd get to a college football playoff. How many SEC teams make the playoff? This is that combined with the Notre Dame question, which I just know is catnip for you. You have the following schools: Tennessee, Georgia, Alabama, Ole Miss, Texas, LSU, and Notre Dame. So that's 7 schools. I'll repeat them again: Tennessee, Georgia, Alabama, Ole Miss, Texas, LSU, Notre Dame. Only 5 of those teams make it to the playoffs this year. Which ones do you bet on?
Okay. So we have all the teams up here still. I've got a very bad memory. Okay. I would take Georgia.
Okay.
I would take Ole Miss.
Mm-hmm.
Tennessee.
Okay.
Alabama and Texas.
Not Notre Dame? You're going to lose your bet?
If I had to put my own personal money on the team, I mean, Notre Dame making the playoff is a different bet than here are the 5 teams that are out here.
We just did a video where you said they're going to make it.
Those 5 teams that I picked can make it while they also make it. But you didn't give me the whole field here. You gave me 8 teams.
No, but you're saying this is, listen, respect Sean's question.
Okay.
You got to pick 5 of these, and the 2 you don't pick don't make it.
Oh, so I guess I have to change it. I thought Notre Dame could still make it, but there doesn't mean that they're a better option than all the teams on the list. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So okay, if I have to remove
what's the path
one
for Notre Dame to make it, and who are you? So who are you removing from your 5 that you just said that is what you actually think is going to happen? So you can artificially insert Notre Dame. Like, who are you removing?
This is really difficult because Ole Miss has an easy schedule. Alabama,
LSU you're throwing out immediately.
I'm throwing out because I don't think LSU is just good enough as a foundational piece. I think Texas is going to make it. I think Tennessee is going to make it. I think Georgia's going to make it. I think Alabama is going to make it. So by process of elimination, I have to remove Ole Miss.
Okay.
Even though they probably have the easiest, most likely path to get there, which is why it makes it hard.
I'm just playing devil's advocate here, so please don't yell at me, everybody.
It's okay.
But can I just pull a schedules matter kind of thing?
Sure.
What if Georgia loses these 3 really hard road games?
I'm not 100% convinced that by the time this is all said and done, Andy, that there isn't a 3-loss team in the field. Like, I don't think that 3 losses automatically removes you.
Yeah, I think Georgia, because of the Clemson win, especially if, let's say Clemson just kept winning and they kept destroying people the way they have in the last couple games. And then they beat Miami in the ACC championship game, and they were a 12-1 ACC champ, and that loss to Georgia sitting there. And Georgia lost in overtime in 2 of those games and lost by 1 on a controversial call on another one. I'm talking about at Alabama, at Texas, at Ole Miss. But won all the other ones, including a win against Tennessee. So they would have beaten 2 playoff teams at that point. Like, that's the path for a 9-3 team to make the playoff right there.
Yeah. And I think if you go back and look at last year's rankings, that every single team outside of the top 12 had 3 losses or more last year. Power conference teams, that is.
Yeah.
So, like, being on the cusp of 11 with 3 losses and a win over Clemson, I think is very realistic. So it would be bad if Georgia went out and lost. But from a thought exercise standpoint, I do think that it's still within the realm of possibility that they could get in with 3 losses.
And I do not think they're going to lose all 3 of those games, by the way.
I don't think that
I do not think that.
physically possible for that to happen, but we'll see.
But it is fascinating, and again, all schedules are not created equal. But I like the way Kyle's making us think. I do. This is what I appreciate about the Dear Andy and Ari segment is we get our brains stretched like taffy in various ways.
We have to revisit what I was saying earlier in the show too, because this question does do it.
Go for it. Okay. Yes.
How many SEC teams are going to make it this year? And I think that you could say it's probably 5. So that takes the entire list there. Alabama, Georgia, Ole Miss, Tennessee, and Texas are the 5. And that gives you 4. And one of the 5 is one of the 4 conference champions. So you still have bad at math show here. So we have 5 total teams, 1 G5 team. We have 6 teams left to fill the gap. So I think that Notre Dame could still firmly get there if they are able to win the rest of their game.
One would be a Big 12 team. the Big 12.
But throwing
champ
the
is one of
Notre
those
Dame doesn't get in there caveat makes me look like an idiot. But in theory, the 5 teams that I chose initially would be a better bet to make it. But that doesn't exclude Notre Dame's participation in the event as well. So like you have to, if I had to get rid of one, I have to get rid of Ole Miss, but I think Ole Miss is going to make it because their schedule, I think they're going to lose 2 games and still do it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think 5 is the number I actually predicted in my post-spring ranking. And I actually wasn't even thinking about it. I was just ranking the teams.
Yeah.
And when I looked and I was done, I was like, oh, crap, I put 5 SEC teams in the playoff. I don't know if that's going to happen. But the more this plays out, the more I can see it happening.
Yeah. Well, I mean, because if they're all like, you just have to get to a position where they're all 10-2. Because if that happens, because they all have really hard schedules, and how do you decipher the best from the worst? You put them all in. So like that's going to happen. I think it's possible that there's 6 teams in there from the SEC at the end of the year. That said, and I'm going to say this as we head into the weekend here, if Notre Dame beats Notre Dame beats Louisville on Saturday, the entire tenor of the make fun of Ari for thinking Notre Dame can run the table I think kind of changes. Like I think you go, okay, this team, still probably isn't going to run the table, but I think that the thought process of if Notre Dame is going to make the playoff changes. Well, and I will know, you need to know that I have put real money that they will make it at like plus 500. So like I am like bought into the idea. I'm not making it up. I did it. So,
I know. And I also think if they beat Louisville, the idea that it comes down to beating USC at the end of the season becomes very real.
Yeah. Now, we still have to worry about landmines every week because if NIU can happen, anything can happen. But from a favored standpoint, Louisville, they'd be favored against Stanford, favored against Georgia Tech, favored against Navy, obviously favored against
Florida see about State, Navy.
Virginia. Navy's good, yeah. But if they actually do play pretty close games historically with Navy sometimes, don't they?
They do.
Florida State, Virginia, and Army. Like I'm looking at the schedule, and there's no reason why they should have more than 1 loss going into the USC game. Now, that doesn't mean upsets can't happen, but on paper, like 11-1 or 10-2 seems very reasonable. And honestly, they probably aren't going to get in at 10-2 because they don't have any quality wins. But let's say they beat Louisville and then Louisville goes on to play for or win the ACC.
Correct.
Then they're in the playoff at 10-2.
What if Navy plays for the American Championship?
I mean, there's a route there for Notre Dame to get in at 10-2. So like the idea that like, oh, you're an idiot for thinking that, because there's a lot of people who are like, how could you possibly have Notre Dame on your bubble watch? It's like, dude, new system, new teams, 10-2, 11-1 Notre Dame, 11-1 Notre Dame, no matter what is in. Yeah. 10-2 Notre Dame could be in. So let's let it play out a little bit, but I'm not going to give up the dream yet. And also, if you can get 5-1 for them to make it, I think that's pretty good.
So we've reached the grab ass portion of the show. We do have to get off the air in time for JD Piquel to start the hard count at 11 a.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Central. But I have to ask Ari this question. When it popped in, I was like, this is amazing. This might be the best question we've ever gotten. It's from Kyle. I missed my window on this, but I have to ask. How did Ari go to college in Arizona? He actually grew up in Arizona as well. And how does he currently live in Texas? And he still managed to develop that take on Mexican food. Ari, explain yourself.
I think that living in Texas has actually ruined it. Because Texas is rampant with Tex-Mex places. And Tex-Mex places are the ones that I think you agree with are all generally kind of similar.
Please explain the difference between Tex-Mex and Mexican to me, because I feel like an idiot when I have people from Texas like, this is great Tex-Mex. I'm like, what's the difference? Like,
okay,
it's
here's
tortillas,
the thing.
beans, and meat.
What's the place here that I've been to a few times that you said, have you been to it, the Mexican place that's really nice? Javier's.
Like
Javier's in Dallas?
Yeah.
And then you sent me the menu, right? And you're like, what did you order there? And I can't remember what I ordered. I think I got chimichangas or something, right?
Chicken mole. I usually get chicken mole.
They have some sort of pork belly melting off the bone type dish.
That one's really good. Yeah.
That type of shit is not on the menu at a Tex-Mex place. A Tex-Mex place is tacos and tortilla chips and fajitas and all the same things that you do. So like, again, the thing that bothers me about my take on Mexican food is that people think that I don't like it, Andy. I think it's good. Like, I like it. I enjoy it when I'm eating it. My only point is that Tex-Mex is all fairly similar. It's very hard to distinguish one good Tex-Mex place from the other. And their carbs are not as good as Italian carbs. Like, and I don't know that in the last part too, which is the best Tex-Mex and the worst Tex-Mex has a much shorter gap between like the best Italian and the worst Italian. Like, I think that it's all really rational. I'm not saying Mexican food sucks or that I don't like tacos. Of course, I've been to the hole-in-the-wall places in Arizona that serve good tacos. Of course, I've been hammered at 4 a.m. at U of A eating Los Betos. Like, I've been there, man. I've walked the walk. I just don't know, like, if somebody was like, hey, would you rather have a big, juicy burger at 2 a.m. when you're drunk, or Taco Bell or Tex-Mex? Like, I would take the burger because a bun is a superior vessel to hold meat than tortilla.
I can live with that. I can accept it. I understand there are going to be people in the chat who think you're insane, but that's why we love you.
Yeah. And the thing about food is that we don't all have to like the same stuff. That's what's fun about talking about it.
Ferris Khan, fun fact, Italian places here are not the same as in Italy. Wait, you mean it's not like the Olive Garden over there? It's not like dining in the kitchen of a delightful Italian stereotype?
I mean, leave it to America to make what they did better here. Guys, I've been to Italy. Have you been to Italy?
I have, yeah.
Look at me straight in the eye. Let's get these people out into the weekend with a hot take.
Their seafood is fantabulous, unbelievable. Like, especially when we're down in Capri and around Naples, like the seafood was amazing. But I'm with you, Ari, and I'm gonna be the ugly American right here. We perfected pizza. They invented it. We perfected it.
I've been to it.
We perfected the noodles and sauce too.
My thought when I went to Italy was that I was going to get my socks blown off with how good their pizza was. They have got great food. Like, don't get me wrong. Italy has great food. I've eaten through Italy. American Italian food is better than Italian food. I'm going to say it.
I don't think we've done that with Chinese, because if like you've been to an authentic Szechuan restaurant,
yeah,
like our version of General Tso's and all that gets blown out of the water. But they've got better pizza.
General Tso's than our General Tso's.
They don't have better General Tso's. They just have better general food than our General Tso's.
I'm saying actual, because I've never been to Asia. Or I've never been to an authentic Asian restaurant.
I haven't either. I'm talking about places that people will tell you in America are authentic representations of this region of China's cooking, as opposed to Panda Express.
And you think that it's better than like a good place that has like orange chicken and General Tso's and sesame chicken and kung pao chicken? There's no way that we didn't do it better than them.
Like I'll give you Masterpiece in Buford, Georgia. Like, go there. It's awesome. If you're in the Atlanta area, if you're north of Atlanta.
But what do you order at those places? Teach me. Like, what do you order at a place that isn't just an American Chinese place?
Well, they've got a couple different things. They've got these kind of hot pot stews that are really good. They're also very spicy.
And that's better than fried chicken covered in sugar sauce?
Yes. And I say this as someone who loves fried chicken covered in sugar sauce. I think you and I are a little different here. I think you veer more toward the trash food than I do.
Yeah. Yeah, you call me.
I like trash food fine, but I want, if I have the option to have the elevated version, I'll take the elevated version. Like, you might take the trash version over that.
I mean, deep fried chicken covered in sweet and sour sauce is like perfection. So I don't know what they're doing over in Asia, but I can't imagine
that's not perfection is fried chicken with hot sauce. Perfection is like Popeyes or Publix fried chicken with hot sauce sprinkled on it. Like, you take some Cholula and sprinkle that on. If I were to finish this show, drive to Publix, grab an 8-piece and a bottle of Cholula, that is one of the best meals you could ever have.
Andy, I'm struggling on this weight journey here, okay? I'm dropping some weight. Like, I am starving. And you know what actually sounds really good? Speaking of fried chicken covered in sugar sauce, Wendy's Saucy Nuggs. I might go grab a few of them on the way to go pick up my parents from the airport.
Hot garlic parm right now.
I mean, I would smash those right now. I would have 20 of them. Not even blink.
I definitely am in a hot garlic parm mood today. I want more savory. When I want sweet, hot honey barbecue. But the hot garlic parm, that's special. All right. Go get some Wendy Saucy Nuggs, everybody, but do it quickly because you need to be back in front of your YouTube On3 Sports YouTube channel. 15 minutes. The hard count with JD Piquel is live. Go yell at JD in the chat. He's got some pretty ferocious takes. So argue with him the way you argue with us. Bring the same energy. We love you. Cannot wait to talk to all of you about the games on Saturday night. For my folks in Florida, be careful. If you are in Apalachicola, Port St. Joe, all those areas, I hope you are listening to this or watching this somewhere else. Like drive north, drive east, drive west, get the hell out of there. Be safe, everybody. We'll talk to you on Saturday night.